Hello and welcome to another video, and today I thought we would take the time to do something fun and different. A couple months ago I did a video that was the top 5 games that people love that I don't. Critically or commercially or both, successful games that everybody seems to love and for some reason I just didn't get it or I didn't like it. Today I thought we'd take the time, flip that coin, and do the opposite side of it. So I want to do the top 5 games that I love that other people just don't. This could either be it was a critical bomb or it was a commercial bomb. People didn't buy it, or it reviewed terribly. People just don't seem to like it, but for some reason I like it. So anyways, here are the top 5 games that I love that everyone else just doesn't seem to love. Number 5 on this list is going to be an Xbox Live Arcade release from 2012 that I was really excited about, and that is Tony Hawk's Pro Skater HD. Now this game also came out on the PS3 and you can actually buy it on Steam. I see it on sale all the time for between $5 and $10. I really like this game a lot. Basically what it is it is an HD remaster of Tony Hawk 1 and Tony Hawk 2. They take a lot of the music from those original games and throw it in, also with some more modern tracks as well, and I think at one point they even added some Metallica songs into it. I love Metallica, so that makes sense for me. Now, the thing I see commonly about people hating on this game or critical reception was kind of down is a lot of people complain that it doesn't feel like the original Tony Hawk to them. It felt kind of off. I never felt this way. I always felt it played perfectly to what the original Tony Hawk games played as. I mean, I even went at one point, pulled out my copy of Tony Hawk 2 for the PS1 and played it, and I felt that they kind of matched up pretty perfectly. I like that they redesigned a lot of my favorite levels in this game, including the school and that downhill level I can't ever remember the name of. They have the helicopter hangar level. They have the other garage hangar level from the first game, or I think it's called the warehouse actually. This is an awesome HD remaster and it's worth your time. The only complaint I have about it is if you play it on the PC version, for some reason it doesn't have controller prompts when you use a controller, and I'm gonna be honest, who's playing a skateboarding game using a keyboard? No one. So this is a great game. I really enjoyed it. If you've never played it because you saw like the critical reception was bad, or you know, maybe you thought it didn't sell very well or something, it's worth your time. Don't listen to the critics on this one. It's a very good HD remaster of older Tony Hawk games, and it's probably the last good Tony Hawk game that came out. As you guys know, Robomundo, the people that made the board games, the Tony Hawk Ride and Tony Hawk Shred with the skateboard peripheral that sucked, made this as well. They did a really good job with it, and then to keep the Tony Hawk license in 2015 they shoved out Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5, and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 is garbage. So this was kind of the last good Tony Hawk game, and honestly I don't think we're going to see another Tony Hawk game for a while. So anyways, that's number 5 on my list. Number 4 on my list is actually going to be a PlayStation 1 game, and it's a game that actually had a pretty critically well-recepted release. However, a lot of people didn't like it because it is a sequel in some respects to one of the most beloved games of all time, and that is Chrono Cross for the original PlayStation. I really like Chrono Cross. In some ways I almost like it more than Chrono Trigger, and which is going to give me a lot of hate, and slow down before you type your comments in the comment section here and say I'm a terrible person for not thinking that Chrono Trigger is better than Chrono Cross. I'm not saying that at all. Chrono Trigger is a great, excellent game, but I think Chrono Cross is also a great, excellent game. I really enjoyed the combat system of this game as a kid when I played through it, and it's a game that I actually kind of want to play through again at some point here. I really enjoyed this game. I think it's a lot of fun. I think it was a good spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger, and a lot of the characters and the storytelling and the writing was really good in Chrono Cross, and I think it's a game that's very overlooked because when it came out, I think there was a lot of excitement of, oh, it's Chrono Trigger 2, and it's not Chrono Trigger 2. It's more of a spiritual successor to Chrono Trigger. Kind of like when you play Demon Souls and then you play Dark Souls. It's kind of similar in that respect. So that's number 4 on my list. Number 3 on my list is actually going to be a more recent release. As you guys know on the channel, I'm a huge fan of the Dead Rising franchise. I like each entry in this franchise for its own reasons. I go back and forth every day. Some days I'll tell you Dead Rising 1's my favorite. Some days I'll tell you Dead Rising 2's my favorite. On a weird day, I might tell you Off the Record's my favorite. However, the most underappreciated Dead Rising game, I think still, is Dead Rising 4 for the Xbox One. I really enjoyed Dead Rising 4 for the Xbox One, and I think a lot of fans didn't like it because it changed a lot of the concepts about Dead Rising, and they got upset about that. Gone are some things like the timer is non-existent when you get to this point, and the escort missions are kind of just not in the game. And those things upset longtime fans of this franchise. However, I think the world is pretty cool. I like the mall. The mall, especially in this game, after they didn't have a mall in Dead Rising 3, is really well designed and a lot of fun to explore and have fun in. The other problem with this game, I think this was the most looked at reason for why Dead Rising 4 was considered a bad game, is the fact that they stripped out the cooperative campaign. This was a bummer even for me when I picked up the game. I had been awaiting this game since it was announced in 2016. I was really excited about it, and then it kind of came out maybe a month before the game released. Hey, there's no cooperative campaign in this game, and the reason was, we want you to experience Frank West's story with just him. That doesn't make a lot of sense because in Dead Rising 2, you just play as 2 versions of Chuck, and in Dead Rising Off the Record, one person plays as Frank and one person plays as Chuck. It didn't make a lot of sense to me for that, and it seemed like it was just a limitation of what the game could offer, and they threw up that reason as a bullshit reason just to overlook the fact that they designed this game and they couldn't figure out a way to have campaign co-op. It was disappointing for sure, but I still think the game is really fun and offers a lot of things that the game should offer. It's a lot of fun. I enjoyed. I think a lot of the zombie killing in the game is fun and exciting. I think the story of it is pretty decent. My only complaint with the story of Dead Rising 4 is they lock the true ending behind a DLC. This is a very Capcom-like thing to do. It was disappointing at the time because until you pay for that DLC and play, if you just leave it at the ending that you get, the ending is kind of lame. However, I still think it's a very good game, and I think it's worth your time. And if you're a fan of Dead Rising, it's totally still worth playing as. Dead Rising 4, that's going to be number 3 on my list. Number 2 on my list is actually going to be a game that was critically panned. The critics hated this game, and over time it sold really well. Fans of this long-running franchise have come to accept it. Some fans really hate it, other fans actually like it. I fall in the category of really like it. That is going to be Resident Evil 6. Now, I have copies here for 360 and the Xbox One remaster. I also own the game on PC because I'm a Resident Evil nut and I need to have the game every possible way I can. Resident Evil 6 is not the best Resident Evil game. Let's, address the elephant in the room. It's not a great Resident Evil game, but it's not the critical failure that the critics would have you believe it was. I still fully maintain that when the game was released and the critics played it, they played it without whatever day one patch that the game received. Thus, they encountered many bugs and issues that I didn't encounter when I played through the game on release day. I've also seen another complaint out there where people complain about the length of the game being too long. This is a ridiculous claim because I'd rather have a longer game than a shorter game, but maybe that's just me. Now, it's true, Resident Evil 6 kind of went really action heavy. We are already kind of getting that with Resident Evil 4 and then 5, and it made sense that 6 was going to keep that formula going. Also, Resident Evil 6 fixed some of the biggest complaints that the casual Resident Evil fans had with this franchise, such as the ability to move while shooting. In Resident Evil 6, you can duck, you can dive, you can roll around on the ground, you can crawl on your back while shooting zombies. All of these movement options were added, and the controls I think are actually pretty solid in the game. Story in Resident Evil 6, it's kind of all over the place if we're being honest, and by the end of it you realize that Resident Evil kind of needs a reboot, and they did an excellent job with that in Resident Evil 7 in terms of its story. However, Resident Evil 6, I don't think it's a bad game. I especially really enjoyed Chris Redfield's campaign. However, I really enjoy this game. I think it's a fun cooperative experience. It does not deserve the hate that it gets. It's not the trash fire game that the critics would make you believe that it is. I think it's a good game. I think it's worth your time if you're a Resident Evil fan and you like 4 and 5 especially. So that's number 2 on my list. And finally, number 1 on my list is also going to be one of my favorite games of all time. And it's shocking because it is an entry in a very, very long-running franchise that also happens to be one of my favorite franchises of all time. People seem to have a hatred for this game that I just don't understand. It did get a sequel, and the sequel, I think, deserves some of the critical issues that it received upon launch. However, I don't think the original did. That is, of course, Mercury Steam's excellent 2010 reboot of Castlevania, Castlevania Lords of Shadow. I love this game to death. It's one of my favorite games of last generation. They made an excellent PC port of this game in 2013, so if you have a decent PC, you can play it there, which is probably the definitive way to play this game now. I love this game to death. I thought everything was excellent about it. The controls, the story, everything about it. One of the biggest surprises is the surprise twist at the ending of Castlevania Lords of Shadow, which I don't want to give away here, even though I will tell you the answer to the twist of this game is literally on the front cover of this game. However, I really enjoy this game. I thought it was an excellent story. I really liked that it kind of took the ideas that God of War brought, and I feel in many ways it's a better game than any of the God of War games in terms of how it was made. I also like that they kind of took elements of Shadow of the Colossus and some of the big boss battles in this game. It's a fun game. I really enjoyed it. I've played through it probably about 10 times since it came out. I love this game to death. It is easily my favorite game that I love that the critics just didn't like. A lot of critics, they were okay with the game, but longtime Castlevania fans really were down on the game because it was a 3D Castlevania game, and for some reason, a lot of Castlevania fans just have a hatred of the 3D games. I personally don't. I think some of the games, you look at something like Layman of Innocence, that's a really good third-person Castlevania game. There's also Curse of Darkness for the PS2 and the Xbox. I think a lot of times when people bitch about Castlevania, they bitch about the 64 games, and honestly, looking at those today, they're not very good Castlevania games. When I was a kid, I was kind of confused about that. But Lords of Shadow, I think, was the first Castlevania game to truly get 3D right, and it's an excellent game. I encourage anyone out there that likes Castlevania and has looked at it and gone, the critics hated it, so I don't want to play it. Ignore them and play this game. Excellent all around. One of my favorite games of last generation. I love this game to death, and you guys will love it too. Anyways, what are some games that you love that everybody else seems to hate? I'd love to know. Remember to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. And as always, until next time.